Welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Spartan Stadium, Michigan State getting ready to play Indiana. Spartan Stadium coming up on Saturday. Michigan State 5-5, Indiana 3-7. Indiana started 3-0, lost 7 straight. Michigan State, excellent win at Illinois. Then a victory over Rutgers that was a little more wonky, a little more slippage, but they're happy to be 2-0 in their last 2 weeks. A lot to work on still. Mel Tucker spoke today. Nothing too revealing today. Your thoughts about Michigan State football and what Mel Tucker had to say today, Paul?
He didn't really say a lot, to be honest with you. You know, this is like another step in the process, and the same thing he says all the time. But they obviously, he's not going to come out and say we want to be bowl eligible this week, but they need a win against Indiana, and that's what they're working on. You know, you talked about slippage last week, and I think some of this stuff, you know, it's stuff that is to be expected. Guys are hurt this time of year. You know, you go back and look at Kendall Brooks,
yes,
and that's knowing what he did throughout the course of the year up to this game. I cannot say. You know, I cannot, like, with a clear conscience say he just had a bad game.
Yeah.
You know, it's injury based in my opinion, because we've seen him go out from injuries. And then you look at some of the other stuff. I think Rutgers did a really nice job getting that ball on the perimeter and getting Jalen Hunt in space at times.
Yes.
And, you know, so I don't see those as slippage things. I just see those as natural flaws in this team based on circumstances. And there's, to some extent, I know people hate to say this because they say next man up, but we've been saying it every single week. At some point, next man up doesn't cut it. And when you've got a 300-pounder out in space trying to tackle a legit, maybe NFL prospect type tailback, and playing 51 snaps or whatever he's been playing, at a defensive end position, God bless you. That's not slippage. That's holes and cracks within the team that you really have no control over. At
some point, you run out of duct tape and you run out of smoke and mirrors. So Rutgers had a week to look at that on film. Illinois didn't. Illinois didn't know that Michigan State was going to start with 4 defensive tackles. And I know Michigan State didn't start with 4 defensive tackles, but to your point, Deshaun Mallory is out, so Hunt is in there. And Illinois knew it. Rutgers knew it coming in. So they did some of that end line zone read stuff and put that defensive end in space, and that was part of it. That wasn't the main reason they got 264 yards, but that was they got some mileage out of that to begin with. Yeah, I mean, you just the missed tackles, all that stuff, it all adds up. You know, on the flip side, Michigan State erased that yardage by being able to run the football. And I thought one of the interesting things that Mel Tucker said today is when they play split safeties, we better be able to run the football. And, you know, so like Michigan State's able to take advantage of what they're seeing from, like, you know, like a Rutgers team. And I'm not sure Indiana's got a defensive head coach with that kind of background, but they have not been good on defense. And if Michigan State's going to give up yards in the run game because of personnel, they better get yards in the run game and take advantage of the opportunities that they have. One of the things I've been wondering about for a long time is, you know, we saw Jeff Pietrowski warm up a couple of weeks ago or whatever it was. Wisconsin game, or was it Michigan game?
It was prior to the Michigan game, and maybe it was even it was back in that time, and I wondered at the time, is he just warming up because it's Michigan? And I really liked. That's the one fix for Michigan State.
It would help
if they had Jeff Pietrowski back, and you know, then you've got Avery Dunn who played really good last week. I thought he played a good game, given his experience level. And then you wonder about a Michael Fletcher. That's another guy that's had you know, a few injuries. I don't know where he is at. Deshaun Mallory is another guy. You know, and then the other thing you kind of wonder is, are any of the freshmen, you know, in a position where they might be able to help, or
at which position?
At, like, a defensive end or something like that, because that's where you've got, like, a lot of, like, you know, you have, like, true freshmen, but those guys aren't usually ever ready to help.
I can't think. I mean, Zion Young is suspended, so I don't know. I can't remember who the other
Carter kid from.
Chase Carter. Yeah, he played in the opener. We haven't seen him since.
James Schott's another kid.
James Schott traveled to Michigan, I think, and I don't
yeah,
think
you know what I'm saying. I'm just like, at this point we're talking about 300-pounders on the edge, and so that's when. Hopefully me talking about those guys illustrates the point of where Michigan State's at. Those are guys we haven't even seen on the travel roster, you know, and Jalen Hunt didn't start the year on the travel roster. So, you know, this is a tough deal for Michigan State to overcome, and they're going to have to find a way to get the job done. And it's not going to be easy.
And coming down the stretch there, you know, Charles Brantley was dinged up for a couple of plays, so at one point, I don't know if they were all on the field at the same time, but in a stretch of 5 or 6 plays there, when Rutgers was driving for, I think, you know, that touchdown that cut it to 7 points, Michigan State had Dylan Tatum on the field, true freshman, Jaden Mangum on the field, true freshman at safety, and Malik Spencer was the nickel. Then he got dinged up, and Kajid, I forget how to pronounce his name. I think he's number 34, Khalil Majid, something like that. He was a non-scholarship guy that we talked about a little bit in the preseason. He was recruited a little bit like as a sophomore, and then was hurt as a junior. Then senior year was COVID. I mean, the guy hadn't played football in 4 years. He's on the field, and he played 3 or 4 snaps. But I mean, like I said, at some point the duct tape runs out. And you made a great point about Kendall Brooks. He's a proven tackler, proven hard-nosed guy. You look back, and late in the Illinois game, he came out of that game with a stinger or something, and he had a little extra apparatus on his pads up, for this game. He wasn't quite himself, and that hurt, and all those things added up. The run game, the perimeter support. Tucker's talking about it. There was one play coming out from the 4-yard line when the running back gained about 31 yards, and Ronald Williams just kind of, when Tucker talks about crack replace, the wide receiver leaves to go crack a linebacker, corner's got to fill. It's written what the assignments are. Anyway, sometimes the corner goes with them in case it's a crack and go, and the linebacker has to replace. But I don't know what the assignment was on that play, but no one was there, and it looked like it's probably supposed to be the corner was supposed to, contain that thing and put it back to the help. Corner got sucked in this way, it gets out 31 yards. It all adds up. You get a missed tackle here, missed tackle there, maybe 2 or 3 times when the pile moves, 31 yards, 10 yards, another 10 here. There are a couple times when Michigan State was willing to play 2 safeties deep, and that's a big chess match in football. Are you going to go 2 safeties deep or 1? If you go 2 safeties deep, then you got to stop the run with the standard number. And like Tucker says, if you're going to go 2 safeties deep, we have to be able to run the ball against you if you're only going to go standard number, make you come down and play it more aggressively. Now, Michigan State on defense against Rutgers was more willing to play with 2 safeties deep, thinking they could stop Rutgers with the standard number, because Rutgers has not been a good rushing team. Rutgers proved that they could do it on that particular day. But there were a lot of times when Rutgers might have had like 1 tight end, so 5 offensive linemen, 1 tight end, that's 6. That's 7 gaps. Michigan State would only have 6 in the box, so they're a gap short, but they're willing to do that. And one of the people that's going to have a gap is a safety back here from 15 yards. That's my B gap, but I'm back here at 15 yards. All right, so it opens up daylight. The running back gets to it. He's got to go make that tackle in 15 yards. It's a 2-way go. It's a lot of space. It's difficult to make a tackle like that. Michigan State was willing to say, if you can get it to that open area, our guy Kendall Brooks can still make the tackle. But there are a couple times when Kendall Brooks got trucked, a couple times when he missed the tackle. So that was a tough. For a guy that was dinged up, they put him on a tackle island there a little bit. So that also. It's what Michigan State, it's the poison they were willing to take. So another 20 yards here, another 20 yards there, and it adds up to 260. As Tucker says, a lot of it's correctable, but a lot of it was circumstantial. I'm still not ready to say it's a terrible run defense.
It's not. I mean, they've proven over the course of
even though they've given up 100 yards rushing 7 straight weeks, I still
but look at who they've played. I mean, you're talking about talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois. I mean, these are like teams that run the football. It's like, this is not the D'Antonio era Michigan State run defense, but they still have some components. We've talked about that. Defensive tackles are pretty good. I think the Kendall Brooks stuff was exacerbated by the fact that the tailback that he was going against was a dude that had very, very strong, was also very, very, very good balance. And when that Konyndyk guy was a problem.
He knocked out Kimbrough.
And I'll tell you what, you look at, I said this in the past, like Rutgers has some of those dudes once in a while, like Gus Edwards, the dude from the Baltimore Ravens right now. Those are those guys that you're like, oh, who's this guy? And then he ends up, he's in the NFL for several years. And Konyndyk is that type of dude. Now, when the other tailback was in there, you didn't quite see as much of that. And so I'm thinking it's not such a bad thing what they were planning on doing. And Kendall Brooks and whomever it was that went and dropped some of these tailbacks, when there was a blocking advantage for Rutgers, they're able to do it when the personnel was average, like their backup tailback. But against Konyndyk, who's got great balance, great power, it was a problem. Now, is Indiana going to have one of those guys?
Nah. They're 14th in the Big Ten in yards per carry at 2.6. I've not scouted them yet, but I would not anticipate they have someone like him. Also, I talked about this in the VCast after the game. Ben Van Sumeren had a couple of plays that were a little bit off. Went back over it again, and he was just a tick off on some things. I talked about, just like the instinctiveness that you need between the tackles, the inside linebacker, was not real good earlier in the year, and he lost the starting job. Windman went in and it improved. Then Windman is suspended, so Van Zoomer goes back to that role, and had some problems here and there. But Van Zoomer is very good in some areas. We talk about it on the perimeter, against bubbles or man-to-man down the slot. He can do some really good things because he's got some ability. So it's interesting how Michigan State's trying to find things that he can do. But in the meantime, Michigan State played 3 series with Van Zoomer out and Brule as an inside linebacker next to Halliday, which moves Halliday to middle linebacker. So, and Brule, he was fast to flow sometimes. When they won gapped, he shot in there quickly. There was a couple, he over pursued on the reverse that got out for 25 yards to Crookshank. So I'm wondering if there's something to work there with Brule, and you really, just kind of cram him to be an inside linebacker right now rather than Van Zoomer. That's probably a war room decision they're talking about over there right now because they went with it for 3 series. Is that something here late in the season that they continue to monkey wrench around with? I don't know.
I think they're going to have to. I think they're.
And you still need Van Zoomer for a few snaps, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I think he's good. I think this might be. I wonder if this Indiana game might be a better matchup for him. I don't know.
Yeah, because Indiana would like to go spread tempo to throw it, and they've got a new quarterback. Whether they're still doing that, I have to check it out this week. But go ahead.
But that's if they go spread tempo, that's going to be a problem with Jalen Hunt, and
yes.
So there's a lot of different things you got to think about. But I think Ben Summerlin's he's tried to make progress. He keeps working. He's doing an okay job. I think that Aaron Brule, same thing. He's done some really good things, and he's had some a lot of missed tackles that you wish he would have had. I mean,
and some big plays.
Some big plays as well. But I mean, those guys are continuing to work, and they're good soldiers, and they're doing their absolute best, and they both want to, and that's those guys are all in this time of year, and that's what you need. And I think that's one of the things regardless of what happens the rest of the way out, this team has shown me the want to from start to finish, and it's not easy when you look at them being 2-4, and then 3-5, and people, us talking off camera, are they going to win another game?
Yeah. After that Minnesota game, I was like, they could go 3-9.
You don't. I mean, because you don't have to be terrible to do that in a really good conference. You can have a decent team. You can have a team that in some conferences would win like 7 games and go 3-9 in a really good conference, which the Big Ten East most certainly is. And you factor in all the injuries, and then you factor in the suspensions. It's really kind of remarkable in some, people don't want to call it mediocrity, which 5-5 is mediocrity, but they don't want to call that remarkable. But in some ways, what Michigan State has done in bouncing back has been remarkable because they found ways to win with a flawed team. And
they've, like you said, they've stayed as physical as they can be. That buy-in. Now with Chester Kimbrough, does he come back fine after being knocked out of that game? I don't know. If he doesn't start, you might be looking at Marquis Lowry or Malik Spencer. That would be a 25th different starter on defense. If they do that, that's possible.
Well, we've been talking about a lot about the defense, but I think a lot of this comes back to, okay, so if your defense is depleted and they're down, what can you do on the other side of the field to pick them up? And I think one of the things that Michigan State could have done last week against Rutgers is finish drives, and they didn't. And so this offense that is starting to run the ball better, they've got to take advantage of scoring opportunities. And they've got to score at this time of year when you got a defense that's wearing down. You've got to score points. Indiana, not a great team, but you have to score points against them because they can score in bunches, and we've seen that throughout the course of the year for Indiana. We've seen bad Indiana teams against decent Michigan State teams still find a way to put up points. And if you find a mismatch as an offense in Indiana, you see some mismatches you can take advantage of with Michigan State defense, there's a chance you're going to score some points. So on the other end of the field, Michigan State has to continue to run the football well, and Peyton Thorne needs to be better this weekend than he was last weekend.
Yeah. Earlier in the year, Michigan State had some drop passes, some third down errors that got them off the field. You don't want to mess around with that in this game. Indiana is a beatable team, obviously. You got to take care of business. Take advantage of your drives and finish the home portion of the season and get a win. And Thorne has had some good moments. He missed some receivers on third down. He was angry with himself, but he also made some nice plays in that game too. And he's not going to be perfect, especially this time of year, but he'll be fine enough for Michigan State. Other areas need to come around. I assume he'll be fine enough. Tight end is getting better. Tight end run blocking has gotten better. Michigan State did a lot of new things in that game. They've been doing more like the double wing tight end thing, and then they motion one of those tight ends over. And then in this game, they were kind of running a trap out of it, like a wham trap, sometimes outside, sometimes inside. They got some mileage out of that. That was good. That was interesting. And Brandon Baldwin continues to get better at left tackle. They were not going against the greatest defense in the world, but I didn't see him losing any physical battles. And in pass protection, number one thing at left tackle, I think he's been solid there, so that's good for them.
I think the offensive line with Horst out has been better.
Yeah.
It's not, it's simplistic to say, well, Horst isn't there, they made improvement. It's not that per se, but I think you've got a bunch of guys that are like blue collar, incremental improvement guys. There's no distractions, and I think that's one of the problems with Horst. There's always that, what's going to happen type of moment with him, and people are, it's different. Like I think I think you can be more cohesive with the guys that they have out there right now. And Brandon Baldwin, to his credit, he kept on working after he was demoted, and he started the season as a starter, gave way to Horst, and now he's back. And you can tell that you can tell the experience that he gained earlier in the year has helped him, because he's a guy that had very, very little experience coming into the season, not just at Michigan State, but at football in general. He's a basketball first guy that went the JUCO route, did not play a lot of football, and now he's starting to figure it out.
All right, so Brandon Baldwin is improving over there at left tackle, and also, his 1 year of junior college was canceled because of COVID. So you're right, not much experience there, but you can see him building as he went along. You mentioned that he was demoted. I wouldn't go that far, because I think he started the first game because Horst was still working through some things. So it's not like he was ever like the cut and dried starter.
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, so and Baldwin's coming around. Carrick didn't play; he was injured at Illinois. Brian Green came in and did some good things. And at center, Samac has had some good games earlier in the year, struggled at times against Michigan. But in this game, snap and pull on the pin and pull where he was pulling with Duplain, Michigan State did some really good things with Samac getting out, finding a linebacker, showing some footwork, log blocking, sealing guys out. Samac, late in season, continuing to see improvement. He was already pretty good. He is continuing to improve. So you're getting late season improvement in terms of tight end blocking. I think at center, I think at Baldwin, at left tackle, and all those things are adding up to a more productive run game. Also, Jalen Berger. The thing about Berger, this visually, Berger looks better. And think about it. I mean, he played, in 2020, he was a freshman COVID year. He played 4 or 5 games. The next year, played a couple games and left the team. So, I mean, he'd only played 4 or 5 college football games before he came here. He's played like twice as many games. 2/3 of his season, of his career, has been this season. So you think about him being an established guy going back to 2020 at Wisconsin, but in reality, that's another guy that's just kind of figuring it out as he goes. So we shouldn't be shocked that we're seeing midseason improvement from him as well.
Well, and if you look at some of the games where Michigan State struggled in the second half and they didn't move the ball, if you go back to like the Maryland game, you go back to the Ohio State game, those kind of games, you look at how many carries he got. So he's got like 8 carries in one of those games, 9 carries in the other one. And he said to me the other day, is you can't really get into a rhythm when you're getting 9 carries or 8 carries in a game. And now we're starting to see him get 15 carries, 17 carries, like on a consistent basis. And that might not seem like a lot, but it really is, especially when you're kind of starting out that game and you're moving the ball. You can do some good things with 15 to 20 carries, and you can be fresh this time of year. He looks physical, fresh, and like I mentioned in the VCast the other night, I just feel like his cuts are crisper.
I agree.
He's not like bouncing anything out. They're just like little simple small cuts, and that's what you see from experienced tailbacks. They're not trying to make a Barry Sanders move. They're just trying to go Emmitt Smith.
I agree. All that stuff is getting better in a lot of ways. Michigan State continuing to improve as a team. They need to continue to do that and beat Indiana. And then Penn State's improving too. They really took Maryland apart. That was impressive, 31-0. So Penn State's trying to play to get into a New Year's 6 game, which is possible. Penn State wins that game in a couple of weeks. It's 10-2. But Michigan State's got a chance to win this game, get to Penn State, which will be a really tough final exam for Michigan State. But that's where we are with Michigan State in this program right now. The wheels have not fallen off. They're still secure, even with different players coming in and doing things. But it's been interesting to watch, not only for this season, but as the program continues to mature.
Yeah, the one thing that Maryland is like every single year, and for the last 5 or 6 years, for however long Loxley's been there, they start hot out of the gates. and then they will. And the one thing that Michigan State has going for it, besides the running game that's improved, they do have some big time skill players. Like you look at what Jaden Reed did, and Keon Coleman has shown what he can do, and Trey Mosley, man. There's a lot of teams that would love to have a Trey Mosley out there. Yeah. And now if those tight ends can get involved and on a consistent basis, or make play. Not just get involved, and I get tired of people that say, well, why don't you focus on getting the ball to the tight end more? You kind of got to play within the scope or scheme of how things happen. Tight ends aren't always going to get the ball, but when they do get the ball, make a play. And it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. But Michigan State has some good personnel, some good skill players, and it would be really nice for them if they could get a defensive end back, or this team would look a lot better with Petrowski out there. Yeah,
it would. That'd help a lot. I don't know where that is, where that stands. Thorne has to continue to make good decisions on 3rd and 4th down. There have been some times where it's easy for us to see up in the press box that maybe someone else was available to him, and I'm sure he sees it on film as well. He's hard on himself. He's going to try to get better. For instance, on the 4th down play when he threw to Tyler Hunt, first of all, he was open. He just missed him, so he'll blame himself for that. But also, Malik Hall was open for an easier throw underneath if he would have time for that. He was getting some pressure, so he probably thought he didn't have time. That one's open right now. Might as well shoot it to him. I can understand the thought process there, but it's the most difficult position to play in any sport. So, and he's a good one. And, there have been plenty of games out here that we've covered over the years, Paul, where Michigan State would lose games because they didn't have a quarterback that made the plays that Thorne made against Rutgers. So was it an A-plus game for him? No. But playing B-plus or B-minus quarterbacking at the college level is not something that grows on trees.
Yeah, I think he gets taken for granted. I think,
good way to say it,
he's like
yes.
Michigan State's Matt Stafford. In some ways, and you look at
remember Brian Hoyer. When Brian Hoyer was here, he had detractors. When Kirk Cousins was here, he had detractors.
I still have people that tell me that Keith Nichol would have been a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins, who's one of the best in the NFL right now.
Keith Nichol was good.
He was good, but I'm just saying, it just is what it is. And one of the things that I think probably gets overlooked in last game, I almost said Brian Hoyer, but he did a heck of a job with his feet. Thorne did a nice job running the football out there in the last game. Michigan State gets about $170 or maybe $160 something in rushing yards that Peyton Thorne doesn't have the rushing yards that he had. The other thing is some of those plays, some of those long ones, and some of the ones to Broussard were directly the result of Thorne changing the play at the line of scrimmage. So,
he's playing winning football. He's playing winning football.
You can tell me that you got to put this guy in there, but I'm telling you, those plays don't work. If Thorne's not seeing what he's seeing in pre-snap, I think he's done a lot better, and he's seen a lot more, and he's gotten more confidence in his offensive line. He's taken a lot of hits this year, but he's bounced back. I think he's a good one, and I think he's continuing to get better.
It's been fun to watch this team rally a little bit. Now they need to finish it off against Indiana on Saturday. We'll be there to watch it. Konyndyk here. Anything else?
No.
For Paul Konyndyk, Jim Comparoni, you've been watching the VCast from East Lansing with the Spartans for SpartanMag.com.